Hello and welcome. This is Corrine. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today I'm sharing 4 different cards using a gorgeous Altenew stamp and stencil. For the main panel, I'm using the Altenew Flutter in Bloom. This is a gorgeous large stamp set, and it does have dies and stencils with it. I did not purchase the dies, but I did get the stencil, and look how big this stamp set is. It has some gorgeous sentiments with it. So I'm pulling off the large flower, and it, like I mentioned, it does come with stencils, so it makes it super easy to color in. So this is a great stamp set to start with. They do provide an inspiration guide, an instruction guide, and right away, as soon as I saw those blue flowers, I knew I wanted to do that. Absolutely gorgeous. They show the Altenew inks that coordinate with it. I only have a few Altenew inks, so I just kind of pulled out inks that I like to use. So the first thing I'm starting with is some Hammermill 80-pound cardstock. I'm just cutting it down knowing that I'm most likely going to be cutting my panel later. So I'm just cutting a little bit off, enough to fit into my MISTI. I pop those into my MISTI, and I'm going to use some VersaFine Nocturne Black ink to stamp. I am rubbing my hands over the stamp because it's the first time that I'm using it, just getting any residue off of it. And I'm going to stamp this down twice. Now, I like to let mine, after I stamp, either dry for a little while or take my heat gun to it. In this case, I took my heat gun to it because I was wanting to continue. I did 2 panels. So I cleaned that off really well and leave it in my MISTI because I plan on, after ink blending over it, it does kind of dull out that black ink a little. So I'm leaving it in my MISTI so I can put it back in and give myself a really good dark impression when I'm ready to. So I pulled out a Simon Says Stamp glass mat. On top of that, I have Altenew 9x12 grip mat. And I was just showing you there that instead of using the transparency that comes with it, I use sticker paper, the reverse side of sticker paper, because it keeps the dust off, it keeps it clean, but it's not hard to remove. If you've ever removed one of those transparencies from those sticky grip mats, you know what I'm talking about. Pulled out some Distress Oxide inks and Dusty Concord in Distress ink, only because I don't have Dusty Concord in Distress ink. And I'm starting with Picked Raspberry, and I thought that would give it a good undertone. I end up covering most of that more with the purples that I'm using. So I have Wilted Violet, Seedless Preserves, and Dusty Concord, I believe. I'm using some small ink blending brushes, and I'm going for a purple theme today. I'm making this card specifically for a friend of mine. You may have seen a recent video I've done where I made a friend of mine a breast cancer awareness or breast cancer card, just letting her know that we are supporting her. Well, unfortunately, I have another friend that I used to work with. She is going through the same thing. Her breast cancer spread to her brain, so she's been fighting it. So I just wanted to send her a card, again, letting her know that we are praying for her and she has people in her corner with her. And her favorite color is purple. Everything purple. Anything purple, everything purple. So I wanted to heavily emphasize the color purple here. And as I mentioned, as I pulled off that stencil, I wasn't liking the pink. So it's so easy with their stencils. I showed you a little bit quickly in the beginning, and I'm sure you've seen other videos. They have etched numbers in them, so you just follow the numbers. So I started with number 1, 2, 3, etc. When I decided I wasn't happy with how much pink there was on there, I just simply put the #1 stencil back on and went back over it with the purple. And in the end, it turned out gorgeous. So here I pulled out some sprout and artichoke. I wanted some leaves to look like they had a little bit of a highlight, hence the sprout, because that's such a bright light green. I love that color. And then the artichoke is just to give it a little dimension. And there's 2 layers of stencils. I did that with both layers. Using some Post-it notes. I wasn't sure how far I wanted to cut this card down at the time, so I made sure to completely cover any possible spot that could get over inked or blended on. I didn't want anything on the card. So now I'm adding the last step in this stencil, which is the center flowers, and I'm using Buttercup by Concord and Ninth. And look how pretty this turned out. So this takes up such a large space. I was able to get 2 cards out of it. And now, like I mentioned, right away when I saw those blue flowers, I wanted to do blue. So I don't show you the entire thing because it's the exact same process. But I pulled out Uncharted Mariner and Faded Jeans, I believe. I used the exact same greens. And I pulled out Stardust for the centers to give it a little bit deeper center. And the other blue was Stormy Sky. So it's Stormy Sky and Uncharted Mariner. Absolutely gorgeous. I plan on making more of these. So after doing all that work, I was a little bit worried about making sure that it lined up perfectly. So I'm sure you've seen this trick before. You just put a piece of transparency paper on top of it. I stick that to the top of, I have a grip mat inside of my MISTI, and you just want to lightly stamp it. It'll show you whether it's lined up perfectly or not, and luckily it was lined up perfectly. So I went ahead and stamped it down, made sure I had a great impression, and this I set aside to dry until the next day. Same with the purple one, I did the exact same thing. And then that transparency, you can just use a little bit of rubbing alcohol on either a paper towel or a rag and clean the transparency, and you can use it for next time. This is a great way to line up your sentiments as well. So now I took out a small Spellbinders rectangle die, and here's where I realized I could get 2 cards out of it. So I ran it through, cut off that excess, and ran it through a second time. I did the exact same thing with the blue stenciled background, but I used smaller dies. So again, keeping with the theme of purple that Sandy loves so much, I went ahead and pulled out my Concord and Ninth, looked through my swatch book, and I chose Fig. But I did want a small black outline because I planned on using black in my sentiment. So I'm cutting out a piece of Fig that's going to map behind it, but I used a smaller rectangle to cut out the center of that to save that piece. I end up using that on the inside of the card, but I like to save the inside. I like to save all my scraps of Concord and Ninth. So I'll glue my main panel down to a black matting. And I will also make my card base out of black cardstock. Here's the lazy way of doing it so you don't quite have to measure it. I just held up my matting piece, decided how much of a border I wanted, and I went ahead and scored it. I ended up scoring it, the card base ended up being 4.5 by 6.5. So I scored it, folded it, gave it a good crease with my bone folder, and then I took it over to my large cutter and cut it down to size. Here I'm just putting a piece of white scrap paper down, holding it with magnets. That way I could see a little bit better when placing, since I'm working black on a black craft mat. I added tape, double-sided tape, took off one side, lined up my frame. Once I was happy with that, then I went ahead and took off the rest of the release paper and adhered that down. Now here's another black piece that I used from that same rectangle die. to just place in there so I didn't have any sort of sagging. And now here's my black mat that will go behind my main panel. So being that I have a black mat, a black card base, and my sentiment was going to be black, I decided to add a little bit of black splatter to it. So I just put a little bit of acrylic paint, added some water, and using a small brush, I went ahead and splattered on some black ink, which ended up tying in beautifully. I pulled out I wanted a stamp set that I had the coordinating dies to go with, so I pulled out the Dreamy Dahlias, again by Altenew, another beautiful stamp set that I plan on doing some more cards with here. And I pulled out You're in My Thoughts, Sending Hugs, so I stamped both of those, pulled out the coordinating die, and I did stamp that on some white cardstock using my black VersaFine Nocturne ink. That's a super crisp black ink. It does take a little bit of time to dry. And I backed those on 3 layers of black cardstock. That way if you see it from the side, you just see the black, which I thought would look good. Gave those little time to dry. I did cut it out with white, and I'm going to use that negative space to pop my piece back in and be able to help me line up my sentiment. Again, using a waffle flower grip mat behind it, it's going to hold it in place. So this does give me a nice impression. I do go ahead and set that aside to dry. You could take your heat gun to it as well. I'm ready to add my main panel. So again, just holding that in place with some magnets. I will use some double-sided tape, just release the top part once I was happy with where that was lined up. Then I can take off the release backing from the rest of it and press it down. So I was trying to decide where I wanted to line that up. I end up putting it right there, move it down just a little bit. And then to finish this off, I used some Wild Orchid Crafts pearls. It just was perfect. And earlier in the video, I said that I added a sub-sentiment. That was on the other card. So for this card, I did add that purple panel on the inside. And again, this is for my friend Sandy, who loves purple. So I stamped out Praying for You at the bottom, and also Let Your Faith Be Bigger Than Your Fear, because I know she's going through so much right now. I want her to know that we're praying for her and keeping her in our thoughts. So again, I did let that dry a little bit, added that to the inside of my card base. And for the second card, I did the exact same Thinking of You. Here's where I added the sub-sentiment that says Sending Hugs. I matted this onto some silver cardstock. I love using silver, and I thought the silver looked great with the purple. So I did the exact same thing, cut out the center of the silver so I could save that glitter cardstock. Added that with some double-sided tape, with just the slightest black mat so it makes that panel stand out. And now I'm using some Pink Fresh gems to finish that off. I thought the silver gems looked great with the silver glitter cardstock. Added that to a black card front, and I'm using my jewel picker with some Barely Art glue in a fine tip bottle. That's my go-to liquid glue. I also like Beacon Fabri-Tac glue, just depending on what I'm using it for. And I used my We Are Memory Keepers envelope because I wanted to get this card sent out right away. Made a matching envelope, and here is a close-up look of both cards. Again, I do like to finish the cards off on the inside. If I don't have plans on sending them out right away, I usually will finish them when I'm sending them. onto the blue cards, I again wanted to incorporate that glitter paper. I made a little bit larger card base. Again, I cut my card panels a little bit smaller. And this one I added 3 pieces of 120-pound paper behind it to give it a little bit of lift. The one on the right, I just glued directly onto the card. So I pulled out the Fluttering Blooms stamp set because I was going to stamp directly onto this card base, and put that in my Misty. Again, using the VersaFine Clair, I stamped that directly onto the card base. For this other one, I pulled out this Hello die, and it's a beautiful scripty font. I believe it's a Gina K. I cut that out 4 different times, adhered it together so it gives it a little bit of dimension, and added that to the front of my card base. It was a little tedious gluing 4 of those together, but it was worth it. It gave it just a little bit of dimension. And it's such a beautiful scripty font. So again, I'm using my dewdrops. I thought those would be perfect. I love that the glue dries completely clear under them and it just shows whatever color is underneath. So in this case, it was either the blue from the flowers or the green from the leaves. I'll give you a closer look here in a moment. I also use the dewdrops for the other card as well. So this is the one that I popped up, showing you a closer look of those dewdrops. They are just my favorite to use. And that silver glitter cardstock I just absolutely love. That sentiment on the right from the Altenew stamp, one of my favorites. It says always in my thoughts. And for this card, I added a few of the dewdrops around this sentiment as well. These were wonderful to make. I hope you enjoyed them as well. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment section, and I hope you consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.